first meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee, and particular welcome to new and returning members of the committee. We've got a fairly full agenda of business this morning, which I intend we make fairly brisk progress through, not least in the hope that we get to the end of the agenda while I still have some voice left. I trust that everyone can hear me at this point, but I may get quieter as we go on, for which my apologies. I should also remind members that this session is being recorded and that the recording will subsequently be made available for public listening. Rona, can we do the Sederunt and apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Karen Carruthers, Councillor Ingalls, Councillor Maitland, and also Councillor Fairbairn, but Councillor Fairbairn may be able to come later in the meeting. As we start the meeting, Councillor McGregor is not present.
Thank you, Rona. We'll move on to declarations of interest. Do any members wish to make a declaration of interest? No, very good, in which case we shall move on. Item 3, the minute of the meeting of 16th March 2017. I understand due to our processes that this minute is simply for noting. Are we content to note that? Very good, in that case we shall move on. Item 4 is delegations to the Policy and Resources Committee. This report advises the committee of our delegations as agreed by full council in May. It is therefore a procedural report for committee members' information. Do any members have any questions, or are we content to note the report as recommended? Mr. Evans, the Democratic Services Manager, is here to answer any questions, should members have any. Just, if we are content to note, that's fantastic. What I would say is, if you're trying to catch my eye, let's not do it by auction process. You do a sort of large Mexican wave or something like that. I discover being up here that it is high time that I went to Specsavers. We'll take that report as duly noted, shall we? Thank you. Item 5, members' induction. This report presents us with outline proposals to develop an induction and orientation plan for members of this committee as regards the operations and activities within the Corporate Services Directorate. This committee has responsibility for oversight of corporate services, and as members can see from the information included in the report, there are a wide range of teams and services for us to develop an understanding of. Officers are seeking our views, therefore, on developing an induction programme that enables us to get to know and understand the different aspects of corporate services, and to do this in a way that helps us engage with staff at the front line and to gain a good understanding of their work and activities. The main considerations in development programme that supports this are outlined in paragraph 3.7.1 of the report. I'm delighted to open up debate and allow us to consider our requirements. Members? Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. I made comments on Tuesday Communities Committee as well. I just think we should show a degree of flexibility in regards to this, content with what's outlined within the report at 3.7.1, the 7 bullet points that are actually there. And I think I heard your voice going on, is it Thursday night, Friday morning? You kept saying, when I'm reading it, the ballot papers coming through, and you go, Tory, Tory, Tory. I'm sure that's where your voice started to go, Chairman. But anyways, aside from that, I'm quite content with this in regards to what's here with induction, but I think we should show a degree of flexibility in regards to even having it in a group setting as well.
You will, of course, have your little joke, Ian. But indeed, I appreciate your sympathy. I think you make a very good point. This will be best done if it is flexible. And I was very pleased to note in the report that officers had taken on board the responses that we made in light of the previous 2 rounds of members' induction, where it was death by PowerPoint effectively and compressed into the first month. It didn't necessarily stick, and by the time we got to the 3rd or 4th month, we had forgotten. I think that the point you make about flexibility is a good one. Any other member, or shall we move to the recommendations? Okay. 2.1 there, we are asked to consider requirements. We've done admittedly briefly. And 2.2, are we content to agree that a programme of induction and orientation is developed with elected members, reflecting our requirements? Happy to agree? Thank you. Moving on, therefore, to item 6, Dumfries and Galloway Council Draft Annual Governance Statement. In this, we are asked to review and approve the draft annual governance statement, which forms part of the annual accounts. This is an annual review process for the Council and reflects the requirements of various regulations and codes of practice. Members will be aware from the report that the unaudited annual accounts will be presented to full Council on the 27th of June and will include an updated version of this statement, subject to our considerations and review. The accounts are then subject to the statutory external audit process. The statement highlights the progress in the last year, particularly in regard to the reshaping of the Council, improvement of our community participation and engagement processes, and member development of our schemes and standing orders. Consistent both with the principles of good governance and, I believe, reflects this administration's commitment to lead the Council in a way that is open and inclusive. Rona Lewis is here to answer any questions on the report, and I'll now open this up to member debate. Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. When I read this, immediately I've written at the top of my papers here, audit and scrutiny, and wondering why that hasn't happened. Now, Rona actually briefed us this morning, but perhaps you should maybe brief all the members so that they know exactly why this is here when it should have been to audit and scrutiny.
Yeah, thank you for that. Since the change to the remit for the then Audit and Risk Committee, it has been our usual practice that the draft annual governance statement goes before Audit and Risk Committee, as it was then first in a draft form, and then it comes to Policy and Resources Committee for further comment, and then moves on to full Council all during the month of June. Unfortunately, fortunately with the local election this year, the timescales were very difficult to achieve in terms of when we got the council diary prepared and we knew which members would be on which committee. So this year, the annual draft governance statement is coming to this committee only before it goes to full council. However, we have provided the opportunity for matters to be raised today, and then we can certainly develop any wording with members during the course of the next few days before the draft report has to be ready for full council papers.
Okay.
When do you need that? Any changes? By which date?
The paperwork is included in the accounts, which will be presented at full council, so we would need to deal with that over the next week. But I would reiterate that these accounts are unaudited and they would come back to audit risk and scrutiny with the external auditor's opinion and for further debate at that point. So we would work with you this week in any comments and anything to be included. But there is obviously further scrutiny through audit risk and scrutiny during the year.
Are you happy with that? Is that acceptable? Okay, any other members? You're being most generous with me this morning. It's much appreciated. In that case, turn to the recommendations at 2.1. Happy to review. 2.2, to delegate effectively, as Graham has explained and Rona has explained, to arrange necessary revisions. And 2.3, to note that the statement will form part of the unaudited financial accounts. Are we content with those? Thank you. Item 7 then is appointments to outside bodies. We are being asked to determine appointments to 2 outside bodies in relation to the delegations which fall to this committee. Before we move to determining the appointments, are there any questions, or shall we move straight to nominations? Are there any questions first? Okay, are there any nominations? Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Dryborough for the Lowlands Reserve Forces and Cadets Association.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Is there any other nomination for the first appointment, the Lowland Reserve Forces and Cadets Association? Are we, if there is no other nomination, are we happy therefore simply to agree that? I take it that we are. Are there any nominations for the member and substitute to the Scotland Excel Joint Committee? Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think from this one it's pretty important from our perspective, and I'd like to propose Councillor Stephen Thompson as the member and Councillor Sean Marshall as the substitute member.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Nicholson, thank you. Are there any other nominations? In that case, I'll take that also to be duly appointed. Thank you. Turning then to item 8, the Corporate Revenue Outturn Report for 2016-17. This report gives members an overview of the Council's financial performance for the year ended 31st March 2017. This, I have to say, very positive outturn position must be set in the context of what all members will recognise were the very significant challenges that services across the Council have faced in the last year. I very much welcome the focus that there has been on both financial and service performance, which has allowed us to achieve this position. The report also updates us on progress in delivering our agreed savings. Officers have consistently highlighted the challenges and risks that are involved in achieving this and have advised on both their potential impact and mitigation. I'm pleased the measures that have been taken have ensured that our budget position is balanced for 2016-17 and that we have achieved more than 93% of our planned savings in what was absolutely a difficult and challenging year. I draw particular attention to the levels of staff savings which have been drawn this past year, totalling some £4.2 million. That's outlined at paragraph 3.12. We're advised that at paragraph 3.13, the remaining savings will be fully delivered in year 2017-18, and that ongoing monitoring will be provided in order to assure us of this progress. I'm also pleased to note that the funding available in the Change Fund amounts to some £6.204 million, and as indicated in paragraph 3.3, this has improved and is available to support investment in the delivery of future savings and decisions of this Council. Appendix 2 to the report provides details on the use of the Change Fund. A separate report, incidentally, as you will know, on the Change Fund will be considered later on the agenda. Before opening discussion up, I would, understandably, want to emphasise the points made in paragraphs 3.16 and 17 of the report, in particular the challenges that lie ahead as the Council develops its plans and budgets. Paul Garrett and Julian Ross are not here to speak to the report, which has slightly thrown me. However, I will open the meeting up to member debate, and I'm sure we can manage to answer the questions in one way or another. Members. Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. We've got quite a lot of questions, I think, so it'll probably take you the whole meeting to go over them. So I suggest that the financial side of the revenue financial side is made a priority training area for the members of the Policy and Resources Committee, and so that we can have a full look at the revenue budget and how it works. And also things like page 58 is the allocated committed fund held by the Council. So I had lots of questions on that, but I think it would be good to have a seminar soon so that all these questions can be answered and we can all get a corporate, a joint look at them. Okay.
I actually happen to think that some level of member training and engagement on the Council's finances is probably a very good idea, given that it is a significant area of focus for us in any given year. And I'm also very well aware that even after 10 years, there is much of this that I still have to learn. I can think back vividly to how much of it I was faced with instantly on being elected, and the very steep learning curve that was. So very happy to take that on board. I think it would be a good idea. Members, any other questions at this point? Steve.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually just a question in relation to the EEI overspend, which I appreciate will be coming to the EEI committee in due course, but it was just to get a wee bit of clarity for the sake of the committee, really, in terms of understand that the overspend wasn't carried forward to the new financial year as it outlines in 3.7, but was met from unallocated provisions. And I was just wondering how the numbers add up there. So it's really just to get a wee bit of clarity on that. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, obviously, kind of two choices when a service overspends in a year. One is to carry it forward for the service to recover itself the following year, or to address the overspend in the year it happens through corporate resources. Now, obviously, we've been having detailed discussions with each director, particularly E&I director, regarding position both in the old year and for the new year, and didn't consider it was realistic to expect the service to be able to both balance their budget in the new year 17-18 and recover the amount from this year. So that's why the recommendation is to write that off against corporate resources. That write-off is reflected within the table at the top of page 50, and it's a net amount, 219, which actually equates to, if you look at page 54, just at the very top, the kind of top section there, it shows a 297 net overspend against EEI, which was partially offset through the release of funds by both communities and corporate services, doing that the net impact on corporate resources was reduced to £219,000. That's what's reflected in that table.
You content with that? Councillor Drive.
I think they also added to that, Chair, there was also an under recovery from planning and the other building wants and things like that. I think what we've done just very recently is looking at what the Scottish Government are looking at for recovery. We may actually eventually get that overspend sorted. So I'm looking forward to see what actually happens with a couple of major applications, hopefully, that are coming in the next year or so, to see if we can get that sorted.
Thank you for that, much appreciated. Is there any other member? Any further questions? In that case, are we content to note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 and agree 2.5, the amounts held by Council and number of funds for specific projects and commitments? I'm also quite happy for us to note the member request for a seminar on Council's finances and budget setting. Quite happy to remit that to the finance team to look at arranging a suitable date. I think that would be a helpful update for all of us. Are we content? Thank you. Then to item 9, Corporate Change Fund and supporting investment in savings. This report provides an overview of the operation of the Corporate Change Fund, as referenced in the previous report, and makes proposals to continue the approach, investing in supporting change and enabling the delivery of financial savings. The report highlights that over the last 7 years, savings of over 85 million have been secured by the Council, and that the change funding approach has been critical to the success of this. We are also asked to consider an adjustment to the process for relatively smaller change fund investments, those which are under £50,000 and which have a payback period of no more than 3 years. Paul Garrett and Gillian Ross are still here to speak to the report, and I'll open this up to member debate and questions. Members? Ian.
A simple question which stood out to me in this one is regarding 2.2 and the change that's been recommended there. If we agree that, could we get an example of where that would have made us more successful in the past?
Paul?
Yep. What we've seen in the last couple of years is a number of relatively small value projects for things like investment in equipment, particularly IT equipment, which supports modernisation, which is generally a relatively modest investment requirement. It's modest savings as well, and because of the process that we've had to go through to get that approved, it hasn't come forward, and it's actually meant we've missed a couple of opportunities. So I don't expect this provision to be used that much. I think it'll be probably a handful of projects a year, but it's that kind of modernisation, investment in equipment, investment in IT is the kind of thing that we've probably missed to date, that hasn't come forward sufficiently, that we expect to be able to pick up through this approach.
Ian, would you come back?
No, thanks so much for that explanation, but I suppose the thing is for me, as it comes through the monitoring reports, it's pretty easy to see. It's not hidden in the background anywhere, so it's quite obvious, and that's the only stickle I would have in regards to that. But if it's fairly obvious where they are, then fair enough.
I think you make a good point. We can ensure that it's specifically referenced in the quarterly reports when they come through.
That's actually recommendation 2.3 to the report, to ensure that members do get full information on each of those reports as they're being progressed.
Appreciate that. I thought looking around the room when IT was mentioned, I could identify the members for whom it's not necessarily working well at the moment. Councillor Nicholl, I think you wish to come in there.
Yeah, I was just surprised that Paul even mentioned IT, considering the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment, with obviously considerable amounts of money have been spent on equipment, which it may either operator problems, and I hold my hand up there because I'm not the most adept at IT, but when I can't even switch the dash thing on, it really gets up my nostrils. Whether I can operate it or not, they say push the button and hold it in. Well, I held it until my finger was numb and I still couldn't get the damn thing to work. So I threw it away at that point, and I hope somebody caught it at the other side of the desk over there. But they are offering me an alternative now. I understand they're going to offer me a laptop instead of a tablet. I hope that's an easier thing to work. But anyway, I just like to raise the fact that IT is not maybe our strongest point at this point in time.
I think we'll take that under advisement. It's probably unfair of me to say that everything that I've been issued with has been working absolutely flawlessly, but I guess it's just maybe I was lucky. Have we any other members on this side? Henry.
Chair, I'm just slightly concerned about the £50,000. There could be a situation developing, say a project might have a value of 150,000 and it could be split into 3 chunks of less than 50. How do we assure that we have that level of control and that mechanism doesn't happen to bypass the system?
Paul?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think one of the things is to progress projects through this mechanism, it needs the approval of both the relevant director and myself, and looking at whether it's the full project we're looking at, it's something we'll consider through that process, so we'll avoid that kind of thing coming forward. And also, as was discussed earlier, members will get details of each of those projects, so they would be able to see if that kind of thing was happening. But I'll work closely with the directors to ensure that's not the case.
Okay, you're happy with that? I beg your pardon, Leader.
Maybe to offer some additional assurance to the member that the Deputy Leader and myself will be asking for detail of these as they come along, so that there will be some member involvement in ensuring that nobody is trying to pull a fast one by splitting things up. This is basically the concern, I think.
Members, with that, are we content to move to the recommendations? Are we happy then to... Beg your pardon, bear with me. We're happy then to note 2.1 and agree 2.2 and 2.3. We are. Thank you. Item 10, implementation of Financial Code 11 debt write-offs. This report provides details of debt written off under delegated authority to officers over the 6-month period to 31st March 2017. New arrangements for reporting to this committee were previously agreed, and we now receive summary information on all write-offs every 6 months, which are deemed uncollectible, and we're also provided with more detail on all write-offs which have a value greater than £10,000. Members will note that the vast majority of sums owed to the Council are collected, and I am pleased to note that the collection levels for council tax and non-domestic rates, highlighted in paragraph 4.1 and summarised in Appendix 3, provide a very strong indication of this. Services do carry out extensive work before recommending sums are considered for write-off, and paragraph 4.4 sets out the reasons under which or for which officers may recommend write-off. Paul Garrett is here to speak to the report, and I'll open this up to members' questions and debate. Archie.
Not so much a question, Chair, but more a comment. I think that shows the hard work that the organisation actually does in trying to get the debt sorted out before we actually have to write it off. And I think I agree with you on the high levels of actual income coming from that, as opposed to the situation where we have, for instance, at the back page where the write-offs is points of percents rather than anything else. I think it's just a job well done by the organisation in that case.
That's a very fair point. Any other members have a question or comment? Henry.
Chair, again, reflect on page 74. Do we have any comparators as to the level of write-off against other local authorities in Scotland?
Thank you. Paul?
We do, certainly, in terms of both council tax and non-domestic rates. Those are looked at across all local authorities as part of the Scottish Local Director of Finance performance indicators. We were ahead in terms of in-year collection and cumulative collection for both council tax and rates. We tend to get about 96% in-year collection of council tax, goes up to over 97% when you collect previous years as well. That's generally about 0.3%. above the national average. So it's not a huge amount, but it is above that average. In terms of Sunday debtors, it's not really collected national. It's not part of a kind of national approach. But we actually did an exercise a couple of years ago with internal audit when we looked at revising our financial code and actually revising the delegation limits available to officers. So we looked at what was happening across Scotland as part of that. And it was apparent through that review that the level of write-offs in other councils was generally a fair bit higher than it is here. So it's more ad hoc in terms of Sunday debtors, but it tends to be lower there as well.
Okay. Andy?
Thanks. I think, again, it's a kind of statement here, but we seem to have struck the balance between recovery and no causing further hardship, and I think we should be commended. The officers should be commended for that, because the lack of complaints in an area that would necessarily bring about complaints because we're pursuing them for something they're not wanting, it actually speaks volumes for me. And I just think we need to put in record that the work the staff have done in this particular area.
A very fair point, absolutely. Have we any other questions or comments? Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. It's just really a comment on the example there given on page 73. I mean, what strikes me with that one, and I'm sure it's a very specific and peculiar case, is just the length of time that process took to reach a kind of outcome, as it were, because that's over 10 years basically from 2006. So I was just wondering, wanting the assurance that normally we wouldn't be letting things go on for that long, effectively, because that's an awful long time to come to a resolution. So I'm just wondering if we can get that assurance from officers.
Yes, I take it you're talking about the council tax write-off there. Yeah, that was a very unusual case. We were aware that the individual had assets. We tried various things, earning arrestments, things like that, over the years. There was difficulties in locating the individual as well. So it was very much a specific case, and it's unusual for things to go on that length of time.
Okay, if you're happy with that. Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. In regards to, I'll not be the only member in the room that's had requests from constituents in regards to their increase in council tax this year. There were quite a few, there's been reviews and so on and so forth. I wonder if there's any correlation between yourselves and the collection department, Paul, and as far as, do we see this becoming a situation next year when it's just happened? Obviously, the first council tax rise in a number of years, plus the extra levy on the higher end coming from Scottish Government. Do we see any potential risk coming out next year that it's got to be more difficult to keep to these kind of figures, these stats?
Paul, carry on, please.
It's something that we're conscious of. We do keep in close contact with colleagues and communities that are actually in the same building that do the kind of collection here. But in terms of the year to date, we've actually seen a continuation and a maintenance of collection levels. Obviously, a lot of council taxes started collected right at the outset of our financial year, and we've maintained previous collection levels. So although that's something we'll continue to monitor, we're not anticipating any real difficulties in terms of that at this stage.
That's certainly reassuring, but the point that it's the first such in, I think, around a decade is a reasonable one. Let's keep an eye on it. Any other members? In which case we will turn to the recommendations. We are asked to note 2.1, 2.11 and 2.12, and indeed 2.1.3. Are we happy to note all of these? We are. Thank you very much. Item 11 is Corporate Services Revenue Budget 2016-17 Outturn. This report provides members with the final budget outturn position for corporate services budget for last financial year. I'm pleased to note the positive financial position which has been achieved with an underspend of £58,000, in which I'm certain has been a year of challenges. I understand that delivery of this outturn has been very much a team effort with the support and efforts of staff, along with clear direction from Director and Heads of Services. The service is requesting transfer of £34,000 to reserves in order to provide resources for the council-wide PC Refresh Scheme Fund and to enable future efficiencies within the service. Paul Garrett and Gillian Ross are here to speak to the report. Members, have we any questions or comments? I did catch the slight intake of breath when it came to PC Refresh. We'll take that as read. Members? In which case, we will move to the recommendations. Are we content to note 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and agree 2.4 and 2.5. Thank you. Item 12 is the Corporate Capital Investment Strategy, final outturn 2016-17. This report gives members details on the financial outturn position for the Council's capital investment strategy for 2016-17. I want to highlight that the total net capital spend of just over £52 million makes a significant contribution to both improving the infrastructure across our region and supporting our priorities, including building the local economy and giving our children and young people the best start in life. Therefore, to have spent the agreed funding available and to have accelerated certain investments is, I consider, a remarkable performance. And I hope it will continue to give us a confidence and reassurance that the Council's agreed 3-year capital programme, along with the indicative 10-year capital investment strategy, will be fully delivered. Paul Garrett and Gemma Ross are here to answer any questions arising from the reports, so I'll now open this up to members. Members, any questions, comments? Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. I will refer to the Appendix 4, Property Building, Other Asset Class Capital Programme Outturn 2016-17. Doesn't have a page number, I don't think, but it'll be the one before 91, so that'll probably be page 90. Okay. I'm referring to the libraries, halfway down to the libraries, customer services integration, and particular reference to Annan, and that is the last paragraph on page 90. I think this process has taken an extremely long time to complete, and the consultation involved has been very poor. The Council has waited until the last minute to go to the Community Council and seek their views. The library users especially have not been consulted, and we have ended up a situation where we have a project which is not supported by the local community. I'm all in favour of fewer and better assets, but this is certainly not a better asset. So I would like a couple of things, a couple of additions to the recommendations, that we have an internal audit into the processes involved in coming to the conclusions in this project. And I don't know if that's a matter that the Audit and Scrutiny Committee could take on, but I'll look for governance from that. And also, secondly, I'd like a more balanced and full report to come forward on that, because the report there it doesn't reflect everything about the project. It doesn't mention that the movement from into the Annan Town Hall is just a temporary fix, that in a few years' time, when there's money in the capital programme, that this facility will be moved into the Annan Victoria Halls, which is in badly need of refurbishment. Also, it states that there was considerable design and stakeholder consultation work. I'd like to know exactly what that. I know that the design has taken a figure of £40,000, has already been spent on plans which don't hold water. So we know that. Pardon? There's 40,000, and I would like to know exactly what the stakeholder consultation work has been. I've mentioned already that the Community Council was asked for the Community Council to be involved a year before they actually were. The library users are appalled at the plans which come forward, and the Community Council is against it. Right, it also says in there, it's a plan which works well for all building stakeholders. Well, it doesn't work for the older people because there's no parking in reach of the town hall. You have to park down at the Everhome. It's a good 400-yard walk uphill. It's not really suitable for that. It says that it's a good design, but the space in the library is much smaller. The reference and local studies section is a third of the existing size, and there's no facilities for small nursery groups to do their because the size of the children's area has halved. But it lacks
Councillor Brodie,
information on...
I do hesitate to interrupt because it's not really my style, but this is a finance report. This is the final outturn.
This is a report which we've got
there-
before us, and it's important.
Well, absolutely, but there
it's
aren't the
important
officers here,
to,
to my understanding, that will
Yeah,
be
it's-
able to answer the questions that you're asking. I think they have to be asked in another forum.
Well, I have been asking them, and I'm not been getting answers. So I think you would agree, Chairman, that we have reports before us which are full and balanced. I think you would agree with that. I won't take up much more of your time.
It's a finance report, Councillor Brodie.
Yeah.
Are the questions on
Right,
the
I was
matters of
saying
finance?
that it is. I'm saying on the financial side that we're going to spend £200,000 on a project which is not value for money because we're going to be moving. It's a temporary fix, and it's a lot of money to spend. So I think that's a financial consideration how we spend the money. So I think we need a full report brought back with all the balance of that. I shall certainly take up the questions there, but I think we need an internal audit inquiry into this and a report which reflects the full facts before us, so that we can have the full financial information on there.
Thank you for your input. Councillor Ferguson.
No, so I think better off it's okay. Had enough sounding off about nothing.
Councillor Carruthers.
People aren't sitting there and saying it's about nothing there. I mean, I've had a lot of, as a fellow ward member, I mean this has been an extensive process for Annan. We certainly, 3 of the 4 members were signed up to it would be the town hall. But what's coming for the side in this particular project is that there may well be another option that wasn't presented to us at the time, being Annan Academy rather than this. Now, haven't seen any detail in regards to that. I'm not sure if that is a real option, is it a potential option, what is it? And I mean, I think Councillor Brodie brings up a lot of points. I would agree with some of them, but not all of them. But I think it's important that we get this right and get it right for as longer term as we can with the community behind us. I've had a lot of phone calls and emails from local residents saying they don't want it in the town hall. They don't want it to stay in the existing site either. And it's this disconnect between where does it go in the short term, stroke long term. The Victoria Market Halls is a long project. So I just wonder, is there an option to actually to delay this in the short term to understand if, I think in real terms, is Annan Academy an actual viable option for this actual going to there rather than being situated within the Annan Town Hall? I've had a lot of concern raised at local level, so I'd like to see, is that potentially an option, Chairman? So I suppose in the back of that, you're absolutely right, this is a financial report, but I think it's a last chance really for ourselves as local members to either write in or write off the viability of Annan Academy being an option. I wonder if there's anything we can do at this committee in regards to that.
Yeah, I'll bring in Councillor Marshall first.
Yeah, just on the same issue, I think just the background behind this, and I mean, it was all members of the council actually agreed. This was a budget saving that was put forward in 2015-16. It was over 2 years. It was going to be taking place over a number of facilities across Dumfries and Galloway. And I think there is this misconception that, you know, the library is still a standalone service. Unfortunately, it's not. It's integrated with customer services and registration. And we did actually have a proposal for Annan originally that the members discussed, and it was at Edam Street, and we asked them to go away and think again. I was at the communities meeting on Tuesday. We're now in a situation that each month that we're delaying this, it's costing the council 6,000 in the savings that should have been made by the integration of the staff. So really, and I've said to Richard, you know, the proposal he's put forward, it's not 11th hour, it's 1 minute to midnight. I think they had a similar situation. It was at Kakubri where you actually had that same facility. There is some issues to resolve, but I think we can actually get there. But to actually now delay it again when we're in the position of going out to tender for the work, I think would be foolish, particularly when we've got the backdrop of actually losing 6,000 savings each month. And it could be in a situation in a year's time that we're looking at facing maybe cuts to the Newton Centre because of the savings that we've not made. So I do think there's merit in looking at the process and how, you know, over the 2 years and maybe learning lessons from that, because as a council, I think we need to learn lessons on an ongoing basis. But on this basis, I think we have to move ahead.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson, you have changed your mind, and then I will bring you back in.
Okay, thanks very much. Two things I have to say, set the record straight. I didn't say it meant nothing to the people of Annan, because I know it did. What I meant was this is a historical paper outlining the position as it is, and as such, you know, there was nothing in that. What I can say is that the issues highlighted, yes, do have merit, but they've had merit for a whole year. And I would suggest it's not a 1 minute to midnight, there's a 1 minute past midnight attempt to bring something onto an agenda here. But there will be an assurance that the Communities Committee, when we will take that through forward, and the Communities Directorate, to ensure that there's a full engagement all the way down the process.
I'll take first time speakers first. Graham?
It's in a different subject. If you wish to continue with the existing subject, you can come back to me.
Well, why don't we deal with this one first, and I will certainly come back to you as soon as we have. Richard?
Thanks, Chair. Again, I think it's pretty disgraceful that Council says that the community facilities in a major town is not important. I think that's all wrong. We do understand that...
Chair, I'd like him to withdraw that remark. That is not what I said.
In fairness, everybody just stop for a minute, please. In fairness, he did clarify that comment. I don't think that was particularly a fair interpretation.
Yeah, I was responding to the first one, and accept that Councillor Ferguson moved back from that position.
So is that, excuse me, Chair, is that an apology?
Did you apologise? Well, if you've apologised, I'll apologise.
Gentlemen, let's behave ourselves and get on, please.
Well, we do understand that it is an integrated facility and it does save money, but the financial questions would be, why has it cost £40,000 to develop a scheme that's only costing 160,000? So that sounds a good financial question. And the question is, should we not be? The second question is, why are we looking at being a short-term council? We should be planning for the future, because we're going to spend 160,000 and it is going to. We're going to move to a capital project in the Victoria Halls in the hopefully not too distant future.
I don't know if finance colleagues wish to add anything to that. I'm not entirely sure that it falls within the scope of this paper. Councillor Crothers, is it on the same matter? It is. Carry on.
Thank you. Well, just to put it into context, I mean, if there was any way, try to get to the proposal that I put forward earlier, even delayed, if we could possibly delay this, it's out to tender, has it been accepted yet? That's my understanding. Even to come back to the next meeting and make sure we can bottom it out at that point. And an academy, I don't know if that is an actual option. Come back to the savings, certainly the savings is a concern in regards to it being, I think from what I can understand, around £50,000 a year, maybe just short of that. But communities just returned a £524,000 saving this last year. So I don't think there's certainly a pressure, I understand that, but for the sake of delaying it, maybe for possibly to the next meeting, whenever that be, whether it's in a month's time or 2 months' time, I haven't got that obviously in my mind, but Chairman, if that's a possibility, very much appreciated, because I've had a lot of concerns raised by local residents in regards to, is Annan Academy actually an option?
I always have sympathy with members raising local concerns. It is exactly what we are here for. But I do not believe that this specific project is a matter either for this paper or, strictly speaking, for this committee. It is a matter for Communities Committee. And indeed, any reference to internal audit would quite properly be a matter for the Scrutiny, Audit and Risk Committee. We are in grave danger, I think, of making decisions on a project about which, with the exception of the well-informed local members in the room, many of us will know absolutely nothing, and on the basis of which we have very little supporting evidence. Again, this is the Outturn report for the last financial year. I'm always sympathetic to people looking for a hook to hang the concerns that they wish quite properly to bring forward, but it's not a matter for this particular set of decisions we are being asked for today, principally, which are to note the report of how we have done in this past financial year. Councillor Brodie and then Councillor Crothers, and I am moving on.
I've listened to you, Chairman, and I'm quite happy that it's a matter for the Communities Committee, but I think the actual processes and what's happened in the 2 years since the project started is that I just need clarification. Is it a matter which would be looked in by this committee as a finance committee, or would it be the audit and risk and scrutiny?
My belief it is some considerable time since I served on the Audit and Risk Committee, but that would be a matter for that committee in its new form. We should bear in mind that we have simply amalgamated it. We have not altered the functions of its two predecessors. Ian Carruthers and then Archie Dryborough, and then we'll move on to the other speakers waiting on other items on the report.
Well, thanks, Chairman, for your patience in regards to this item. I think what you're saying is if what I'm proposing is incompetent, I would take it that it is incompetent. We can't actually fulfil my desires within this committee. It lies in another committee setting or even elsewhere. So hopefully we'll get sympathetic ear of the Communities Chairman and the Audit and Risk, but we'll have to come back to that at a different time. But thank you anyways for your patience on this particular matter, Chairman.
I always endeavour to be patient, and I think that you are right in that course of action. Archie.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to say we haven't got the delegation of the Communities Committee in this particular committee, so I think we note this particular thing and move on and let the communities deal with that side of things.
Absolutely content to do so. Councillor Nicholl, you were next, and then the leader.
Thank you, Chair. On a more positive note, less controversial, I trust, there are a couple of things mentioned in this report which are in my ward, Sorby Hall and the Old Town Hall in Newton Stewart, and I would like they're both completed, I understand, but I was in Sorby Hall just on Tuesday evening, and I would have to say that the standard of workmanship that has been done is absolutely superb, and I think our staff and our contractors have to be complimented on that work, having been done very timeously, except maybe in the Old Town Hall in Newton Stewart, which they hit extra problems like dry rot and things like that. Nothing serious, you know. But the Sorby Hall is a superb facility, and I hope the community appreciate it. Thank you.
I do very much appreciate the comment, and I sometimes fear that our staff don't necessarily hear sufficient praise from us when they've got things right and have done well, even from ourselves. I do appreciate that. Leader.
Right, thank you, Chair. Apologies for being parochial, but I think this is the parochial part of the meeting. Perhaps my concern, I suppose, is around paragraph 311. Members will be aware about the concerns of the community about the sale of land at Parkhead and the loss of amenity. I know in page 86 that there's a 715,000 capital receipt for, I presume, the council-owned land at Parkhead, and that the land referred to in 311 is a common good-owned land. I note that also is to come back to a future report to the committee in respect of how the receipts are apportioned between the council and the common good. I wondered, and this again may actually be a matter more for the Communities Committee, but my understanding from colleagues who have been in this council a lot longer than I have was that in the past there were caveats with regard to facilities such as the football pitches there, and the replacement of the football pitches. And I wondered whether, I mean, obviously there will be some financial consequences if those are to be retained or replaced, and I wondered if that could be included in any future report, and also for confirmation as to whether or not the land, the common good on land, is actually sold at the moment, or whether that's in the process of being sold.
Paul, if there is any of that you can answer.
Yeah, just to say that at paragraph 3.11, we're actually talking about the combined land. It's the land that is it's partly owned by the council, partly owned by the common good. The 715,000 receipt relates to the combined amount.
That is
for
correct.
both.
Thank you.
Just to say, we have put the full amount into the capital fund that's referenced in the earlier report on the agenda. The full amount is now within the council's capital fund, and it won't be used until a further report comes forward on both the allocation and the use of that money.
But the common good land is actually sold as well, along with the council land.
Andy, on the same item, I take it?
Yes, absolutely. The sale for the Common Good subcommittee was clear that the proportion of the land that was Common Good land would go to the Common Good. Are you saying at this moment in time the money is not in the Common Good fund, it is sitting in Council's main reserves? Because that was clearly not the decision of the Common Good committee. And the second thing is the new owners, to change the use of the land, will have to go for planning permission anyway, so it will go through a planning process, which is actually out with the remit of this committee, I would suggest.
Paul?
At this stage, the full receipt is within the council's resources, but as I said earlier, we have put it into the capital fund, we've ring-fenced it within that fund. It will not be touched for any council purpose. It will not be used until there is a further report on the element for the common good and its ongoing use.
So can I come back
Okay,
in, Rob? Yeah,
absolutely.
so it's actually ring fence within the capital fund. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Paul. Yep.
Okay, if you're happy with that clarification. Sean, you were next.
Thanks. Just in relation to page 86, which is the capital receipts generated for last financial year. I would expect, and I know Louise isn't here, but I would expect the capital receipt to have been concluded for Cornerstones and Annan, and just wondered, is there a delay in that one? Because we agreed that, I think, the middle of last financial year, so I would have thought it would have shown on this list.
Paul, are you able to assist?
It's certainly been the list of potential sales for a wee while. Now it's one we're expecting to come through, but as far as I'm aware, it hasn't been concluded yet, but we can certainly get further information on that and come back to you on it.
Okay, happy with that, and indeed if it can be circulated to the ward members, if that's appropriate. Have we any other? Ian?
Just a quick one on page 88 in regards to DG1. Just remind us what that 3.509 million was, the breakdown and so on and so forth, please.
Paul?
Yes, that's part of the combined budget. Members about this time last year agreed the full budget for the DG1 remedial works. It's funded through the capital fund, and the 3.5 million is a release from that fund in the old financial year to support the works done to date.
Okay, Ian, do you wish to come back?
I suppose, I mean, it's maybe not for this meeting, but it's just in regards to, there was a legal process we went through, there was compensation. So, and I think we were favoured on that side. I suppose we won't see that anywhere, if there's any correlation between this figure here and any compensation that the council may have received. No. So, okay, right, thanks. I think I understand.
Happy to come back on that.
Just to say, the sum that the council received does contribute to the total budget available for DG1, and that 3.5 million that's been spent last year is from within that overall budget.
Are we content with that then? Have we any other questions or comments? Very good. Turning to the recommendations, are we content to note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5? Thank you. Item 13, property stroke buildings brackets other and ICT stroke business systems asset class programs 2017-18 and 2019-20 or to 2019-20. This report outlines the proposed asset class capital programs for the next 3 financial years in the 2 asset classes which this committee has responsibility for. As members will see, each appendix provides detail on the funding allocations. Paul Clark and Jockey Kerr and Graham McAlorum are here to deal with any questions arising from the report. I'll now open this up to members' questions and comments. Members? Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually about I suppose, setting the priorities for the ICT business asset class programme. I think it's clear that we want our ICT, our IT systems, etc., to serve our priorities. And at the moment, members' issues aside, I think there's a wider strategic issue which we need to sort of tackle and actually make work for the wider public. So I think we need to look at ways that our ICT strategy is actually prioritised to deliver, for example, a case management system that's actually going to close the loop between the member of the public or the elected member or whoever asking the question and actually getting a closure, an answer, rather than just a commitment to do something, which is often the case through EMES, for example. So I would suggest a case management system, and I'll leave that to the experts to determine, but also that ties in with the various strands of project that we've tried and attempted in the past to take advantage of mobile working, which is where staff in the field can effectively complete the task that they're on, and that's meant to sort of close that loop, as it were, to feed back to their work programmers, and really just to develop a priority in terms of making sure we have an integrated system that means we can be more efficient, more accountable to our public and of course to ourselves. And it should aid staff in terms of a consistent training across the piece, so they'll all be able to know how to use the appropriate systems without confusion, rather than what we have at the moment, which EMES, for all its best intentions, is clearly a labour-intensive bolt-on to I believe Lagan, I think it is, which I think is due for an upgrade. So it's really just to get, I suppose, this committee's approval to prioritise the development of a proper IT system, if you like, that ties in our public's needs, the delivery of work, and the closing the loop of reporting, rather than what we have at the moment, which where we're being asked to rate responses, and there seems to be more time spent in trying to find out which responses we're meant to rate than actually getting closure on the work we've asked to be carried out. So it's just to suggest that to the committee. Thank you.
I appreciate the suggestion, Graham. I think I'd like to respond to that.
I can certainly clarify that the prioritisation of ICT spend, particularly the capital budget, is related to the digital and ICT strategy that was approved in November. It focuses on, in particular, citizen-centred delivery, which is one of the key issues that you mentioned. Smarter working, and that's in particular the mobile and agile element of that. Health and social care integration, improved use of information, and obviously safe and secure ICT. Those are the current priorities for the capital spend. I do believe that the replacement of the Lagan system, which is currently being specified, includes an improved case management system or that type of functionality.
Stephen, if you'd like to come back.
Thank you. No, I'm reassured by that, and I did read the strategy with interest as it was a few months ago. I think we met to discuss it at one point, but new council, and I think we've got an opportunity here at this committee to actually really set clearly our strategy should include the priorities, which you've outlined there, to be fair, but that I think we're more entitled to maybe expect delivery by focusing on fewer priorities, if you like. So I think we really want to get that case management, the Amazon process, if you know, so you can close the loop, members of the public, and we can get sort of satisfaction and resolution to the issues we've raised, and also that ties in with mobile working and works programming, which of course improves efficiency, improves our service, and effectively makes savings potentially as well. Thank you.
Can I bring Lorna in at this point?
I recognise what Councillor Thompson's speaking about in terms of EMES and following through rather than just like an inquiry service. That's certainly something that Graham and I will take with Derek Crichton and his team who operate the MES service and look at how we can prioritise that and bring back proposals to bring that forward at a quicker pace than maybe is planned at this current stage. So we'll come back to members with proposals around that.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. So can we include in that some form, basic form of casework management system for councillors? Because, you know, how do we look back over 3-4 years, some a lot longer than that, and you've got this vague thing in the back of your mind that you dealt with that a few years ago. Is there a system, for example, that could be brought in relatively cheaply, but it would be effective for elected members to record for themselves and for the service, of course, what they're actually doing and the complaints they're receiving from members of the public?
I hear in terms of that kind of additionality in terms of members' case management as well. We'll look into all those matters and bring forward options for members and indeed any resource requirements related to that. We do know that some members have used their own case management in the past and have access to that through other means. And so we'll look at that. We do know other councils use case management systems that might be helpful. So we'll bring forward everything for members to see and consider, and then we'll take it from there. So we will do that.
Okay, thank you. Members, have we any other questions or comments on this item? I take it we do not. In that case, at 2.1, we are asked to agree the funding allocations within the property and buildings, brackets other, asset class. Are we happy to agree that? And at 2.2, the funding allocations within ICT and business asset class 2017-18 to 19-20, as set in Appendix 2. Stephen, did you wish to add anything to that?
No, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think you know, officers have already committed to bring back a report outlining the priorities as we've just discussed. So happy with that. Thanks.
In that case, we will track that through as it develops, and we're then content to agree 2.2 as well. Thank you. Item 14, severance policy for Scotland, consultation on severance arrangements across the devolved public sector. In this, we're being asked to consider a response to the Scottish Government's consultation on a severance policy for Scotland. The consultation is set out in Appendix 1 of this report and closes on the 23rd of June. As the report outlines, the Scottish Government is seeking to ensure severance arrangements are fair across the public sector and deliver value for money, while assisting public bodies to manage changes in their workforces effectively. The consultation also reflects the policy set by the UK Government on reform of exit payments. Officers have presented suggested responses to the consultation and have provided advice and analysis in the report for our consideration. I'm also assured by the recent Audit Scotland examination, which is referenced in the report, on this Council's processes for severance, which is clear that we are complying with best practice and that our policies reflect this. Paul Clarkin is here to answer any questions. I'll open this up to members. Archie.
Chair, thanks very much, and I agree with what you said there about, you know, this council's policy on looking at severance arrangements across Dumfries and Galloway, and we have seen as good practice and best practice in some cases. There was just one question on the legalities of actually bringing a consultation like this forward from the UK Government. There is legislation and European legislation which, you know, suggests that this perhaps is not a good idea and maybe kicked into the long grass by the Westminster Government. Paul, can you give us a sort of clarity on the legislation and all this?
Paul?
There's actually devolved powers to deal with the matters under consultation, so they're actually keeping that separate. I think the mention of replicating the UK arrangements is simply to demonstrate the arrangements that they have actually got south of the border, rather than any guarantee that Scotland have to apply these.
Okay, Archie, you wish to come back? Okay, Andy.
Thanks. I'm trying to work my way through this, Paul, and it's as always, it's not the easiest thing to read and pull together. So you've obviously been in the bowels of this for quite a while. What does this, for example, reflect somebody who retires from the police and then gets a job with the council or the health board, or a retired senior officer for the council who gets the job with the health board or with the police board or whatever? Is this the kind of thing we're talking about here?
There's too many elements of it. What they're doing is trying to create a severance, a set of principles for application across Scotland in terms of severance arrangements across all devolved public bodies. And the second aspect is on recovery, that anybody who works in a public body who earns over 80,000 and who actually returns to local authority or other services, then there would be recovery of anything above the cap.
Okay, Andy, you want to come back? Any other members' questions or comments? In that case, I'll turn to recommendations, in which we are asked to approve the response to the Scottish Government consultation for submission in advance of the closing date of 23rd June. Are we happy to approve that? I take it that we are. Thank you. I have no other urgent business. I have no urgent business. I'll thereby bring this meeting to a close. Thank you all for your broadly good-natured contributions.